Sponsored by the Big 98, Nashville's #1 for new country and the home of the Bobby Bones Show.
We're so thrilled to have back on an incredible music journalist, award-winning, he's done so much with his books and with his articles, a music historian, Marc Myers. Marc, thanks for coming on the show.
Eric, great to be with you again.
I was telling you before we started the interview, and I've certainly admired your books and your work and your articles and all the great things you do. But, after your 2016 original book came out of Anatomy of the Songs, and now Anatomy of 55 More Songs, that last book, I can't believe it was 2016, was a smash hit. I think this one might do better. I mean, I love the stories in here, Marc.
Thanks, Eric. It feels, it's meatier, it's longer, and I think the stories have a lot more wow factors, don't you?
I totally do. What grabbed me, and I think what, so many musicians and songwriters watching the show will appreciate, is that it gives you a deeper understanding. It's kind of like when we used to listen to albums and you could, flip them around your hands and look at the liner notes and all that. I think you've accomplished the same, because one of my favorite things was the John Fogerty quote, to where Bad Moon Rising, and, and it, and the line was something about bathroom on the right.
Yeah. And we could clear that up, or is it Franny or Annie in the weight?
Right.
Who's getting the weight taken off of her, right?
I know, because we all sing those songs along. It's like, we're really not sure, and also
right.
like Alice Cooper's interview that you did.
Yeah. I mean, Alice is he's a wonderful interview. You almost have to ask him like one question, and then everything else that follows is perfect. I mean, you just don't have to jump in.
Right.
It's just like it's like an unspooling ribbon. It just keeps coming and coming in just perfect order. So many of these people are just wonderful people. I mean, they're artists, but they're performers, and a lot of times they're showmen, and they, have certain, images and persona that people see either on album covers or in concert. But when you get right down to them, like when you really have a conversation with them, they're just wonderfully alive, and they're excited about what they do, and they're tender, and they're shy. I mean, they're normal. They're human.
Right.
Which is kind of interesting, which you don't find with a lot of actors. They're always on. But I think musicians, once they're off stage, you suddenly realize you're talking to somebody next door.
Well, and certainly for you and I, being huge fans of music and musicians, and what I really enjoy about your new book is that, you bring that out, whether it's humor or whether it's, just on a song line that changed like Alice, or like with Joan Jett on Bad Reputation, to where she felt like she had a bad reputation, and I mean, even, Roberta Flack and Ozzy and all these artists that you have on here, it's just, the stories, the way you molded these together. I don't know how you picked 55.
Oh, you're kind, Eric. I mean, one of my favorite mind blowers in the book, is I always wondered who sang "Be Quiet, Big Boys Don't Cry." I was always curious who was singing that on 10cc's "I'm Not in Love." And when I asked, it turned out it was the receptionist at the studio, that they liked her voice over the phone. They brought her into the studio, told her what to say. And that's who's saying that on there. It's the studio receptionist. But that's what, as you know, Eric, that's what is so lively about pop music. There are all these incredible moments that contributed to the music we love so much.
Well, and like on that song, Marc, that's one of those songs that always haunts me. Not only from the original one, but then when it was thrown into like Mr. Jaws and everything else, and you hear that line, it just sticks in your head. But so many of the artists that you had, you cover such a wide swath. I think what's incredible that you do, Marc, is that you're not going down just one, like rock concert, your last book, which was so great. You're touching on different genres of music and very different artists within this, with each song.
Yeah, I mean, I really wanted this to have the impact that I wanted this to have is that I want people to feel as if they're looking at a jukebox, that things are, you can press any button you want. You can come into the book on the 54th song. You can go back to the 3rd song. You can pretty much come in anywhere, and each one has its own significance. It's an island unto itself, right?
Well, and I think what you've done for me as a listener and lover of music and of musicians and everything is to where when you listen to these songs now, they're going to mean more to you. It's like, it's like so many songs, Jimi Hendrix songs and everything else, like we talked about before, to where everybody sings them wrong. And it's like, you can't understand from the recording or the wording, and bringing clarity to the songs like you've done, speaking to the actual artist and going, no, here's what I meant. And here's why this line was this way,
Yeah, and you say something that's quite interesting, Eric, because when I think of this book and I think of, the impact that it has when you read it, it's almost like taking the coffee table that you love, the wood coffee table, and tracing it all the way back to the tree, and then showing the reader how that tree, that fell down in the forest, how it went to the sawmill, and how the craftsman took it over, and then how they sawed it and assembled it, and how the polisher came in and then coated it, and then somebody else came in and polished it up, and then it's how something you love was crafted, and all the way back to its source.
Well, and once again, with the source, everybody that you interviewed for this book, it seems like everybody is so forthcoming with you, like the friend you are, from all of the articles and coverage you've done over the years. And obviously, American Songwriter Magazine is even touting how great this book is. And you're constantly doing work with your articles and also with your website still.
Oh, Jazzwax. Yeah. Jazzwax.com. Thank you.
So, you're a busy guy. So when I got the new copy, I'm like going, how does Marc accomplish all this? Where do you find the time?
Oh, it's easy, Eric. You just don't go out.
You just go meet up with all these great musicians and go, hey, give me your best stories.
Right. Yeah. No, I think the musicians know how much I love what they do.
Right.
They know that I'm coming at it from a high level. They also know that I'm coming at it from a level where I want to translate it so that people can understand it. And in this book, I'm not bogging down on which sequencers are used or which headphones were plugged into what, and this guitar used these strings. It's just I really tried to turn every one of these into either a drama or a love story. And it's a story. It's always a story for me. It opens loud, there are turning points, and it closes poetic.
Well, and you're such an incredible author, Marc, to where I couldn't help but think, and not to add more to your plate, but going through this, and certainly I know songwriters are going to love this as well. I recommend any songwriters to pick up a copy, read this book. But I thought to myself while I was going through it, wow, what a great documentary this would make.
It really is true. I mean, another mind blower, for example, when Kenny Rogers was recording The Gambler, and I said to him, when you were recording The Gambler, who are you thinking of? I mean, were you thinking of somebody in particular? Did you ever play cards? He goes, well, I'm not much of a gambler, and I'm, not a poker player. He goes, I was thinking of Ray Charles. And the person I envisioned as the gambler was Ray Charles. And it's so interesting, right? Because you see that song as sort of like a Western and an, old crabby gunslinger, retired gunslinger, and some kid trying to figure out, what's the meaning of life. And in fact, the artist himself, as he's singing it, is singing of the soul that Ray Charles, the wisdom and the older, wiser singer himself passing on information to the younger guy, Kenny Rogers. It's interesting getting into the heads of these artists when they were creating these songs. Well,
and you do it so well. And for me, Marc, it gives me a deeper meaning on songs and artists that I already love. It just brings it even more home. It's like going, okay, I love that song. Like we're talking about the 10cc song. It's like, but that gives me a deeper meaning. It's like I have a more of appreciation. And I think with, Anatomy of 55 More Songs, you've really outdone yourself. I like it that you've, increased the length of the stories and everything and gone into more depth. I've got to ask you, are you going to be doing, book signings in the future? I hope that, people can get signed copies from you as well.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to be out in Tucson. I'll be out in Tucson in March, giving a public talk at the book festival there in Tucson, in Arizona. So anyone who can't bear the winter any longer and needs a warmer place to be, the Tucson Book Festival, I'll be there.
Nashville might be a great place if you came to Country Music Hall of Fame.
I would love to do that. I would love to talk about Kenny Rogers. I would love to talk about Charlie Daniels. I mean, just that ending on that Charlie Daniels essay where Itzhak Perlman calls him, one of the finest classical violinists in the world, calls him, and he can't believe that the guy called him to talk to him about violin playing. That's at the end of the day, all of these artists, it's what the business that they're in is in the humanity business. Right. They're about human beings, about pleasing audiences, making people happy, getting people excited, making them feel something. Right. And that's what makes these artists so special, that they do something so magical and mysterious, like create air, because music is just air. You can't touch it, you can't drive it, you can't eat it. All you can do is capture it with your ear. And yet some things that are played on an instrument don't hit you at all, and other things get millions and millions of people to respond and make those people feel. And that's the magic of pop music, really, and all music.
I think it feeds our soul. And it's just, I think so many artists and bands and everything are incredible storytellers with their songs and lyrics, just like you are, in how you write and how you craft things to where it really comes out a lot more meaningful. And that's why I love this book, Anatomy of 55 More Songs. I know it can be bought everywhere, all the major bookstores, online, Amazon, and all that. But for your own website also, Mark, where should viewers go to get a signed copy and also to find out where you're going to do book signings?
Well, I'll be signed copies will probably be handled by one particular bookstore. And again, this book comes out December 6th, so we're working all of that out this week, in fact. But as far as signing goes, much of my traveling is limited just because of the workload, and because so much is being done these days, just as we're doing it now, Eric, which is Zoom. The so-called book tour almost really doesn't exist anymore, except for certain authors, but mostly it's done this way. Mm-hmm. But if they go to jazzwax.com, which is my daily music musings, it's never just about jazz. I recently reviewed Revolver by the Beatles. I'm constantly reviewing all kinds of things. But if you go to jazzwax.com, that's where you'll get the news in terms of what's going on with books and where it can be bought. But again, this book is a lot lighter than hauling a jukebox home. But
you're something, want the jukebox to match it after you've read it.
I'm going to tell your viewers something really cool right now. That when you buy this book, if you go to marcmyers.com, MARCMYERS.com, and scroll down a little bit, I put up a free playlist of every single song in the book in order.
Wow.
So that you can basically sit there in your chair or in front of the fireplace and listen to all of these songs in order as you're reading. And it turns out that each one of these essays only takes about 3 minutes to read. Mm-hmm. So in effect, you are reading in sync with the music as it's playing.
That's genius. And I am going to need my copy signed at a point when I see you.
My pleasure, Eric. Of course. Of course.
I love your writing style, and the artists and everything are so forthcoming with you, Mark. It's a great book. Everybody needs to get a copy of this. Get your own at your favorite bookstore or go to Mark's website. Also, be sure and follow him online. Just an incredibly prolific writer. Anatomy of 55 More Songs. Marc Myers, thank you for coming on the show.
Eric, thanks for having me. Great to see you as always.
Sponsored by the Big 98, Nashville's #1 for new country and the home of the Bobby Bones Show.